Good morning, Mountain Lions. Yesterday, I had asked the question of which character that we were introduced to, Sprinkles, Thud, or the whale, Coral. Which character do you think was most helpful to the story? So there was no right answer. That was really all your opinion. So whatever you thought, as long as you could back it up with evidence, that's how you do it. So great job choosing somebody and then proving why you thought that they were the correct answer. Today we start on chapter 67, The Town. This week we're finishing the book, so let's get going. Pookie was a big little dog. Her body was round, her legs were short, her ears were long. Although the dog looked funny, she was serious about protecting her home. She slapped her paws on the windowsill and stared into the night to make sure all was well outside. But all was not well. A new clump of weeds had mysteriously sprouted in the yard. Pookie needed to take a closer look. The dog whined by the back door until somebody let her out. Then she scurried across the porch, down the steps, and over to the mysterious weeds. As Pookie approached, a raspy growl sounded in her throat. "Where do these weeds come from?" she said to herself, sniffing. "They weren't here this afternoon." The weeds rustled in the breeze, and that was enough to set Pookie off. The dog barked and barked and barked, and then, astonishingly, the weeds spoke to her in a calm, clear voice. "I'm sorry if I disturbed you," said the weeds. Pookie stopped barking. "I was hoping to pass through here without being seen, but you saw me. You were a very good guard dog." Pookie resumed barking. "No, no, shh," said the weeds. "Please stop barking." But there was no stopping Pookie. The clump of weeds decided to move. Like some sort of monster, the weeds rose up on two legs and leaped over the fence into the neighboring yard. Felix had heard Pookie barking next door, and when the weedy monster landed in his yard, he started barking as well. That's like Thor and Ruby style. But this dog reminds me of Adam's dog. So the monster kept going, leaping fences from one yard to the next. Every house in the neighborhood seemed to have a dog, and they all began barking about the weedy monster. Reader, you and I know the monster was actually our robot in disguise, but the dogs never figured out what happened that night. Roz finally slunk into the shadows behind a school building and listened as the chorus of dogs settled down. "That didn't go very well," said the goose as he landed beside his mother. "No, it did not," said the robot. "This will only be tougher in daylight." "I know. I will have to try something else." Early the next morning, the sun started rising, automobiles driving, robots running errands. However, one of the robots was not like the rest. Roz had picked every speck of dirt from her body, and now she blended in with the normal robots, going about their normal routines. Our robot was hiding in plain sight. Roz marched through town, turning left and right down the streets, as Brightbill watched from above. Along the way, she passed a variety of robots, all going about their business. There was even another Rosum robot marching around, who looked identical to our Roz, except she was shinier with a different unit number. It occurred to Rosum Unit 7134 that if anyone noticed her unit number, it might bring a swift response from the Recos. But as she continued past houses and shops and robots and humans, there didn't seem to be any danger. Everything was going smoothly until she heard an airship flying over the town. A robot felt something like dread as she waited for a sleek white ship to appear. If they found her now, there'd be no escape. But the ship that appeared wasn't white, it was black, and it flew over without stopping. Roz was safe. And suddenly she was dreaming about airships. Returning to the island would be so easy with the ship. She and Brightbill would climb in, fire up the engines, and be home in no time at all. There was no safe way for our robot to get an airship. She had to figure out another way home. Chapter 68, The Station. At the edge of town where the houses stopped and the countryside began was a small train station. 2 platforms sat on either side of the tracks. Humans and robots were standing around waiting for the next train to arrive. Nobody paid any attention to our robot as she calmly marched past. When Roz was safely out of sight, she slipped into the woods where Brightbill was hiding. The goose opened his mouth to speak, but the station bell started ringing. Speeding down the tracks was a passenger train. A whistle blew. The train gently braked, and a minute later it came to a smooth stop at the station. Passengers burst out of the train cars while others stepped aboard. The first 9 cars were reserved for humans and had wide windows and comfortable seats. The only robots allowed in those cars were service robots, who brought food and drinks to the humans. All the other robots were confined to a windowless car at the end of the train. "Where's it going?" whispered Brightbill as he peeked out from the brush. "The sign says this is an express train to the city," said Roz. The goose turned to his mother. "We have to go past the city to get home. This train could save us a lot of time. We should hop on." The robot turned to her son. "I don't know if that's a good idea. It seems risky." "Ma, I watched you walk through town, and no one even noticed you. We'll be fine. Let's follow those robots into the last car. I'll find a hiding spot, and we'll be in the city before you know it." Roz had questions. "How large is the city? Do we know where to go? What if we get lost?" "Relax, Ma. My pigeon friend, Graybeak, lives there. She will be happy to help us." A voice called out from the loudspeaker, and the last couple of passengers hurried along the platform. "I'm going to check it out," said Brightbill. With a quick flurry of wing beats, he fluttered out from the brush and onto the roof of the last train car. The goose lowered his long neck and looked through the open door. Then he looked back and waved for his mom to join him. A whistle blew, and Brightbill waved faster. Roz had little choice, so she slipped out of the trees and marched onto the platform. "In here, Ma!" Brightbill pointed to the doorway beneath him. Everything about this situation made our robot nervous. Her survival instincts were tingling. Roz looked up at her son on the roof, and then she stepped through the train door. But before Brightbill could flutter in behind her, the door slid closed, and the train began to move. What's going to happen? He didn't make it on. Do you think it's a problem? I'm thinking, I don't know. He has wings, right? So at least he can fly along the top of the train. So maybe it's better that he doesn't go on and kind of give them away. I don't know. What do you guys think? I would love to hear. All right, here we go. Chapter 69, The Train. Our robot felt something like panic as the train pulled away from the station. She wanted to break down the door, leap from the train, and find her son. But what could she do? She had to act like a normal robot. She had to pretend nothing was wrong. The train car's interior was a long, windowless room filled with rows and rows of robots. The robots were facing forward, all standing still. If not for their softly glowing eyes, you might think they were statues. Some of the robots were perfect and new, but most had scrapes and dents. None more than Razum, Unit 7134. Roz walked down the aisle and stood in the last row, and the train started to accelerate. Faster and faster it went, until it reached its crushing speed. Then it hummed along the tracks, occasionally swinging left or right as it snaked around a curve. With no windows, Roz could only wonder how far she was traveling. She could only wonder about the scenery outside. Mostly, she wondered about her son. Was Brightbill okay? How would she find him? Would they ever see each other again? Of course they would. Brightbill was smart and resourceful. The goose would simply follow the train tracks to the city. Then he would find his pigeon friend, Graybeak, and she would help them reunite. Roz just had to stay out of trouble. Time crawled by. The robots gently swayed with the motion of the train. Finally, there was an announcement from the loudspeaker. Next and final stop, Center City Station. A whistle blew, and the train braked and slowed and came to a smooth stop. The door slid open, and all the robots filed out. Chapter 70, The March Through the City. The main hall of Center City Station was enormous. Wide columns stretched up to an arched ceiling. We know they were talking about rows of robots, columns in the station. We know all about that from math arrays. A huge electronic screen flickered with train schedules. The whole place was bustling with humans and robots, and everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going. Everyone except Roz. There was our robot standing still in the station while commuters hurried past. She was trying to calculate her next move, and she had to think quickly. You see, a normal robot would never loiter there for long. Roz needed to do something, anything. And when a crew of Roslyn robots marched past in single file, she could think of no better plan than to join the line. She followed the crew through a set of doors, and suddenly they were outside. The city was a blur of activity. Automobiles hummed down the streets, robots marched along the sidewalks, humans talked and laughed and shouted. Buildings towered overhead, and above them, airships buzzed across the sky. Airships. For a moment, Roz was dreaming again about how easily she could be home on an airship. But reality came crashing back when a white triangular ship darted over. It was gone in an instant, disappearing behind the rooftops. But that was all it took for her survival instincts to flare. Were the Recos searching for Roz, or going about some other business? I don't know. Roz tried to focus on her immediate surroundings. She was still marching behind that crew of robots. With each step, she grew more nervous that they noticed her tagging along. She wanted to break away, and as they started weaving and shuffling through the crowd of tourists, Roz slowed and stopped. The robot crew continued on without her. Now Roz was on her own, but she didn't know what to do or where to go. When in doubt, Brightbill had always guided her north, so our robot set off through the city in that direction. While marching northward, Roz passed beautiful boulevards and architecture and gardens and art, and yet she had to ignore it all. She had to act like a normal robot. A normal robot would never wander the city admiring beautiful things. Wherever Roz looked, she saw normal robots concentrating on their tasks and nothing else. They ran errands, delivered food, swept sidewalks, cleaned windows, fixed machines, built glorious structures, and did more jobs than you could possibly imagine. Most walked on two legs, but some rolled on wheels or slid up and down the side of buildings on tracks. The city was glittering with a glittering modern metropolis where humans lived in luxury, all thanks to the work of robots. Roz was marching when sunlight faded and the city lights brightened. She was marching when the humans went in for the night and the robots continued to work. She was marching when the sun came up and the humans filtered out of their buildings. A new day began in the city, and there was Roz, marching north, blending in, anxiously hoping that her son would appear. Chapter 71, The Observations. Sunlight sparkled off of the skyline. New buildings were constructed, old buildings were taken down. Cargo ships docked in the harbor. Delivery trucks unloaded crates. Bright signs flickered with advertisements. Robots worked behind the scenes. Children played in parks. Adults ate and drank at outdoor cafes. The city pulsed with energy. A wild robot observed it all. Last one, Chapter 72, The Police. A pair of police robots stood on the sidewalk while foot traffic glided past them. Their heads swiveled back and forth as they scanned the crowd with their glowing eyes. The police looked menacing, but they sounded friendly. Whenever a human walked by, they'd say, "Have a nice day," in a perky voice. There were a lot of humans walking by, so the police had to keep repeating their words. Have a nice day, have a nice day, have a nice day. Our robot was not having a nice day. She was alone in the city and worried about her son. She wanted nothing to do with the police, but she couldn't avoid them. If she turned suddenly, she might draw attention, so she kept her eyes forward and calmly marched on with the other robots. Roz may have looked calm on the outside, but on the inside, her thoughts were scrambled. Were the police dangerous? Did they work with the Recos? Was she about to be caught? It seemed as if the police were watching Roz. Their eyes lingered on her for a second, 2 seconds, or 3, and they continued scanning the crowd. Our robot felt something like relief when she made it past without incident. She went on her way, just another robot on the street, and those perky voices gradually faded behind her. Have a nice day. Have a nice day. Have a nice day. All right, my loves, we're going to stop right there. I hope you have a nice day. What I want you to do this time is draw me a picture of the city. Holy moly, Peter Brown went back and he described that in so much detail of what the robots were doing, what they looked like, the people, the energy, the big buildings, how it glittered. That scene, I wish it had a picture, but I bet you that your pictures will be better. So use what you heard the author say to draw me a picture of the city. All right. And then, if you had a city, what would you name it? So what is this city called? We don't have a name for it, so tell me. It's just Center City Station that she arrived to. So you can make up a name for your city. All right, can't wait to see it.